You're listening to Head Voice, bringing you inside the minds of singers and sound creators who are redefining what it means to make music with the voice. I'm Evan.
And I'm Kayla, and we're super excited to bring you a special live episode. We had a great time this past weekend at LAAF, the LA A Cappella Festival, and we recorded a panel we led called The Future of A Cappella. A big thanks to Mike Jankowski, Rob Dietz, Lilli Wilder, Meron Mogos, Olefsky, and Christina Wilson for kindly sitting on the panel.
It turned out super fun and informative, and I'm really glad that we had all these talented people to talk about moving a cappella forward. You may notice in the background that there's the occasional screams of a cappella children in the background. In the classroom next door and outside there were a bombs and classes happening, so that's what they are, but hopefully it won't come out too much. One thing before we get into the episode, we are 2 episodes away from our 50th episode, and we are holding an ongoing giveaway of a personal sketch for you by Kayla. And all you have to do is leave us a review and rating on iTunes. It takes like 30 seconds, and you're automatically entered. You don't have to do anything else but that. And we'll draw the winners in our 50th in a couple episodes. There's lots of good stuff to get to, so I'm not going to waste your time anymore. I hope you enjoy this panel on the future of a cappella. Cool. Alrighty. Let's do this thing. Okay. Hi. Hello. Hopefully you are here for the Future of A Cappella panel. We are Head Voice. If you don't know who we are, we're a weekly podcast. We talk about a cappella, vocal music, beatboxers, body percussion, anything. We're just talking about people that are kind of talking to people that are moving vocal music forward. So I'm Evan also. I'm based in Boston right now. I'm a arranger, producer, and I was in a group called...
Very excited about Evan outside in the hallway.
And I was in a group called the BU Troublemakers, and now I'm in a group called Birdland.
Yes, Birdland.
Yeah. And I am Kayla, and I'm the other half of Head Voice. I was also in the BU Troublemakers, and I work in marketing, and I'm also in Birdland, so a lot of the same things. So we kind of timelined this panel so that it would kind of go from sort of the history of a cappella to current times to what the future might look like. And just as a disclaimer, there's a lot of excitement for this.
Is that going to show up on the microphone?
I hope so.
Final? Yeah. For those listening at home, there was a loud cheer in the...
Just a disclaimer, we are recording everything, so will be sharing mics. And if you do have any questions, just please hold them to the end. And so we just kind of wanted to start off, if each person could just go down the line and say their name, where they're based, and what they do.
Hey, everybody. My name is Mike Jankowski. I own and run Acapella Productions based out of Buffalo, New York. Been involved in acapella probably for about, 10 or 12 years now. See a lot of faces in this room that I got to know through the process, some that have mentored me. Bill here, by the way. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Hi, everybody. My name is Rob Dietz. I'm based out here in Los Angeles, California. I was there's a lot of noise in the hallway. People are like super pumped about a cappella for some reason today. I don't know what's going on. I was a vocal arranger and director on the Sing Off for 3 seasons. I did some work for Glee for a while. I have been in the Funx and Level, and I direct Legacy these days. And I just really like a cappella music.
Hi, my name is Lilli. I am 19. I am based out of Dayton, Ohio, and I am the current alto in Vocalight. I also do my own solo stuff by the name of Lilli Wilder, and getting started in that. I've been doing a cappella since I was... Wow, people are really excited.
No joke, people are pumped for a cappella.
Really excited. I have been doing a cappella since
her class chug a Red Bull? Like, what is her class?
I've been doing a cappella since I was 12, so I've been doing it for about 7-8 years now, and it keeps getting better. I'm excited.
Hey guys, I'm Meron Mogos. I'm based here in Los Angeles, California. I've been doing a cappella for about 10 years, I think, and I was formerly the executive producer of the Los Angeles A Cappella Festival, and I've just moved into the role of director of events for CASA, so very involved now in all of the festivals for CASA, and really excited to be working with a lot more people.
Danny Olefsky. Been singing a cappella and beatboxing for as long as I can remember high school. And around 2015, I started doing video. So I'm representing that side of things up here, doing a bunch of concert video and then some music videos.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christina. I sing with Honey Whiskey Trio, and I'm also part of HIVE, which is a new group that just had our first debut performance in Oakland like 2 weeks ago. Very excited. And I like pasta, so if you want to follow me on my social media, I will teach you how to make pasta by hand. Just throwing that in there.
Oh, hang on.
So this panel is now going to be about pasta. We're switching the topic. Okay, so like I said, we kind of wanted to take a step back and sort of look at the last 10 years. So there's been a lot of sort of milestones within the a cappella community. There's been the Sing-Off, which started 2009. There's been the rise of pentatonics, Pitch Perfect. A lot of big milestones have happened. So we kind of wanted to direct our first question at Rob, actually, since you were involved in the Sing-Off. And if there were any, if you could please sort of describe like the shift from that period to today, or some big trends that you've seen.
It wasn't cool and now it is. Really, that's kind of the thing. One of the biggest things that I saw in that time was that we as a community started thinking about what we were doing more in terms of genre and less in terms of like, oh, we're going to be this novelty thing, right? We started thinking about like, oh, we can have rock groups and we can have R&B groups and we can have pop groups, and that not that didn't exist before, but it become largely because of the Sing-Off. That was a big catalyst for that. It was like, well, we had to have 16 groups on this show that were all different from each other in some marketable way. So everyone was like, oh, marketing matters. Cool. Okay, so now we got to start thinking about like not just are we an a cappella group, but what kind of a cappella group are we? What does our branding project? How are people going to connect with us? Who are our fans? Thinking about that from that kind of standpoint, I think shifted the paradigm a little bit more into how pop music was working in general anyway. That was a lot of it. And then, I don't know, we just kind of got lucky, too. I mean, we got lucky that there were a lot of things that kind of exploded around the same time, and everyone was like, ooh, we can make money from this. Ooh, you know what I mean? And that's like, as soon as people realize that they can make money from something, everything just kind of flows. And I was proud, actually. There were a lot of things that happened in the early days of that explosion where it was like, I was in a cappella in 2008, I think it was, where they did the failed MTV pilot at finals. If anybody knows about that or remembers, MTV was making a pilot about the ICCA competition for a while, and they came to finals and they interviewed us and they were like, so do you guys do things with tempos? And we were like, yeah, we do. But
there was things with tempos?
Just things with tempos. And they were like, so you guys like crazy frat boys? And we were like, no, we like chess and checkers, actually. But there was this I don't want to say exploitative, but is that right? Exploitative? Sure. There was more of the sense of, oh, we're going to make something dramatic out of this. And I think that we have had some of that come out of it, but I was really happy that in a lot of ways we kind of held out, and like the real flagship things that came out were things that were about the music. Sing-Off, for all of its drama, I think really at its heart was a music show. Glee, I think really, there was obviously a lot of glitz and glamour to it, but I think it did a great job of conveying the excitement of performing and the passion about the music, and that was really what came through. So I've been really proud of the fact that through all of this, I think the passion and the camaraderie and the positive aspects about what we do have really been the dominant thing that get people excited about it, and that's been really cool to see. I just want to point out too, like I feel kind of awkward talking about this in a room with Bill Hare and Jeff Thatcher, like people that made this cool before it was cool. I don't think you got like, and but the thing is, it's like, I'm saying all this stuff. I'm like, oh, well, we started doing this, and they're like, yeah, we were doing that in like 1991. So props to the people that carried that torch way before there was a torch to carry, and I think really laid the foundation for all this stuff to explode when it did. If we hadn't had the community that we had, and we hadn't had the talent that we had, and we hadn't had the exposure that we had up to that point, I don't think this would have just started from nothing. So I guess that is to say props to you guys. And as around the block, quote unquote, as I've been, I'm still a whippersnapper. So respect to you guys. And yeah.
Yeah. We could definitely cover the whole history of a cappella, but unfortunately we only
Bill was there he was recording Gregorian chant back in the day. Like he was in the church, like, no, it's, oh.
Yeah. And we could probably wax poetic about the good old days for a while. But so, like, looking to where a cappella is now, if any of you have thoughts about the strengths of our community at present and what is kind of the prevailing trends or things that are really pushing it forward in, like, this current moment, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so I think that the future is female. I think that we are headed towards equality. I think that we are headed towards so much progression and community. A cappella is one of the coolest experiences that a person can experience. I think if you meet someone and you don't know anything about them and they tell you that they do a cappella, it's an instant connection. Like, no matter their background, no matter where they're from, no matter anything, it's kind of like, wow, we do this really special thing together. And so I think we're really headed towards a sense of love and community and like coolness together.
Yeah, I think we've reached a point, kind of to piggyback on that, like 5-6 years ago when I told people I do a cappella, I had to follow it up. I'm like, oh, like we don't have instruments. We sing like it's a bunch of harmonies. Like, not for 5 years have I had to explain what a cappella was. And now that we're at a point of like, people know what it is, I think we're at a point where people are starting to feel comfortable experimenting and pushing, and we're not trying to break into the scene. Now we're evolving it.
At the same time, though, I think the challenge is that because we're getting a little bit less media exposure than we did maybe even 2-3 years ago, there's fewer resources to break in on a larger level, right? So I think that we're seeing, unfortunately, a bit of a drop-off in the number of groups that are starting because the barrier to entry is a little bit higher. You can't just come out of the gate and be in a TV show anymore. You have to grind and grind and grind. Vocalight, grinding. HIVE, grinding. You know what I mean? There's a lot more that has to happen. And I think... Like, I'm excited about June, the project that I'm involved with JD Frizzell and a lot of other great people in the community. But like, we're trying to create opportunities for these new professional groups to start and thrive and get a kickstart, because it's it's hard. It's hard to just go from 0 to 60. But we need people to do it. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of interest and no product.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think the step before that, I totally agree that the future is in those professional groups pushing the boundaries. I think for better or for worse, I think this medium's always going to be kind of predominantly scholastic. That's always going to be the bread and butter. Like, most groups are going to be scholastic by number anyway. What are people's thoughts on the state of collegiate, high school, middle school a cappella? Like, what are you seeing from that?
So I guess we've been working with some of the varsity vocals competitions for 5 or 6 years now. Sound engineering, judging, that kind of thing. Group identity has become something that has shifted pretty dramatically. Groups just aren't coming and singing because they want to sing. They're coming to sing because they have a purpose and they have a message they want to convey. And I think the groups that you see that are doing really well on social media, doing well with like ticket sales and their projects and what they're up to, is they understand that the music comes from them, but isn't always about them. And it's about who they're singing to. And that's been a shift where the last few years, like, I've had multiple occasions. I just got goosebumps thinking about something where groups have like reached me and like, I'm like the old man, like 700 shows, this is the same thing every night type thing. So when a college group goes up there and they like knock my socks off, it's special, and it keeps happening more and more. So that's probably one of the good things that I've seen.
Meron?
Oh, just to add to that, I think the middle school and high school a cappella scene right now is particularly exciting. It's just exploding. I mean, I can tell you when I was in high school, there was absolutely no a cappella program. I barely even knew what a cappella was until I, was a freshman in college. So I think that more and more programs are, are being created and giving these students the opportunity to start so much younger is really like what's creating these like all-star groups that are headlining amazing festivals now, and then also setting themselves up to really have like a big future in a cappella.
Yeah, and previous to like all the camps that are starting up right now, you would have like CASA festivals, you'd have ICCA, but now you have like A Cappella Academy, you have A Cappella University, you have Camp A Cappella, you have all these like summer camps that are opening up their doors to middle school, high school, adult students, and it's really generating a lot of interest at younger ages. I mean, I can tell you, like, the majority of Vocalight, like, I saw them when they were in Camp A Cappella, like, 8th and 9th grade, and now this is what they're doing. Like, they started there. I see you, Justin. But it's so cool that
I met Justin when he was like 12, I think.
Yeah.
It was like
and now he's 13.
I was 13 maybe.
It's just it's like the farm club of a cappella, and I love it. And I think that's something that we should push more too.
Question to the audience: who would you say is the #1 college a cappella group in the country? Anybody?
Pitch Slap from Berkeley.
Pitch Slap from Berkeley. Pitch Slap. Who else? SoCal Vocals. Nor'easters? Okay, I just want to point out, and this is, I think, I had a theory, and I think it's being proven true. The East Coast people said the East Coast groups, and the West Coast people said the West Coast groups, right? And to that end, I think that it is less regional than it's ever been, but it's still super regional. Right?
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like Nor'easters is like, I go to stuff on the East Coast and it's like, oh, I want to sound like the Nor'easters. And it's out here, it's like, oh, I want to sound like SoCal Vocals. You know what I mean? It's like, there are still the leaders in their area that are kind of like carrying the torch, and there's other people that are innovating around that to some degree, but I think that it is still, it's like, it used to be like by zip code, and now it's by like half of the country, kind of, but it's still like very regional, which I think is interesting as like a trend.
Do you think you want to talk about video and that playing a role?
But one thing before that, as more and more people graduate out of the successful collegiate scene, people are going to become teachers, middle school teachers, high school teachers, and eventually college professors. And I think we're going to see more larks and mixes with Aaron Hackle at the helm, like people who have been to ICCA finals and then become professors. And I also think, I assume the post-collegiate arena will grow as more and more people graduate out as well. I can't imagine the inverse, that it will start shrinking.
That would be an interesting trend if we started to see that. As just for anybody, if you're listening at home, one thing to jump off of the people graduating and starting groups, that's absolutely what is happening. But on the flip side, I go to the NAC convention. I go to these conventions with these high school teachers that want to do more pop a cappella, and they're like, I don't know how. And I'm like, yes, you do. You have most of the tools that you need already. So if you're listening to this at home and you're like, I want to start a group, do it. There's so many people out there that can give you the little nudge in the direction. And I got to tell you, it's not the difference between what you're doing in your chorus and what you would do in your a cappella group is not night and day. You know, people look at it and I think that they see this divide where they're like, how could I ever do that?
Just stop playing the piano.
Just stop playing the piano.
You're done.
Exactly. Drop the piano on, see what it sounds like. It's going to be great. Seriously, it's the consonants are a little bit different. You need to train a bass, you need to train a beatboxer. You're 70% of the way there if you do those three things. So just to put that out there, if anybody's listening at home, like, go for it, because we need more of that. We need more people directing groups, and I think that there are a lot more people out there who are capable of doing that, who don't because they're scared and they don't want to try it because they're not sure if it'll work. It'll work.
And if I might chime in just for a second, like, I think that like this happening right now is proof positive that there are resources to start groups and make your group better. If you're a beginning group, if you have been around a few years and just want to get better, that people all of y'all are available to talk. There's multiple podcasts. There's all these things. There's these camps and everything. There's so many tools to make yourself better, where I feel like even just a few years ago, you're just how do I make a chord in tune? And you don't know how, but there's so many things to push that along.
The professionals in this industry are here because of passion. This is not people just settle into to make a bunch of money.
You don't get into this for the money.
It's a passion field.
I actually wanted to ask Meron specifically, just because you're more on the logistical side of things, and anyone else can answer this question too if you have an answer. But since you've been more involved with the festival side, what do you see occurring trend-wise in that sort of arena, and what has shifted in the past 10 years, and where do you think that festival sort of thing is going?
So there are definitely a few things that I've noticed recently. I think in terms of trends, at least within the scholastic competitions for these festivals, people are really kind of wanting to turn their sets into some kind of artistic expression, more so than just doing a cover or medleys or following a theme specifically. They're really trying to transform these performances into real artwork. So I think that's really exciting and giving people opportunities to be truly creative in different ways. So that's really exciting. But one thing I mean, this is slightly a negative, but one thing I feel has been really interesting is that I'm noticing sort of a decline in the attendance of groups, at least across festivals so far. And part of me is trying to figure out what that is. Sometimes I don't know if it's because we're kind of stacked against ICCA season sometimes, so a lot of groups are deciding, between one or the other. And then what was the other thing? Maybe because the sing-off is no longer on the air, for example, and it's the last of the Pitch Perfect movies. I almost wonder if a cappella, like in the mainstream world, has sort of like reached its 15 minutes. Do you know what I mean? So that's something that I really wonder when it comes to like the future of a cappella. Are we going to still be relevant within like the pop, like mainstream pop culture world?
I think you'd have some insight into this. Is the only way to be in the mainstream to be kind of doing that, to be like playing up on like the competition aspect? Because like I know people like to see like, oh, like a riff off or whatever that's totally real, or like stuff like that. There's different festivals and different things that are happening. Can it exist in a non-competition form?
I think the issue is that as much as we have a cappella groups being represented in a very professional, talented way, like Pentatonics, for example, I still think that when we think about Pitch Perfect, for example, like obviously it's put a cappella like very much on the radar, but it's still like a comedy, you know what I mean? And it's still kind of like somewhat of like a joke, So I always wonder like whether or not in terms of that mainstream audience, if this community is being taken like more seriously as like music, art form, like as a contender with like, people producing original songs, and we have a lot of a cappella groups doing that now. So I think it's just a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that might lead well to Christina. You definitely understand how a cappella works, but I think in some degree you are can be on the periphery of it in terms of, touching other styles and instruments and whatever with HIVE and Honey Whiskey Trio both. How you've had HIVE is obviously newer, but with Honey Whiskey Trio and already HIVE, you like have had great success kind of doing your own thing. Like, how do you find that goes? Because I think you're kind of, different, alternative than the mainstream.
Yeah, we just had a little bit of this discussion in the diversity and inclusion panel. A lot of us tend to fall into that we're pushing the envelope and changing stuff when really you're not doing your job. So, own that pushing the envelope. Like Legacy did something that was a huge risk in the Scholastic competition last night. How many of you were at the show last night? Okay, so having a single person and having these people try and get cues off of that single person when they are nowhere near, that is a huge, huge, huge risk, but it's a risk that you need to be willing to take. Not to just be like, yay, Honey Whiskey Trio. But when we were here in 2014, we did a song that was completely in prime unison, and that was like, probably some people that were there that night was like, what the hell? Like, they didn't sing any harmony. So that was a huge risk on our part. And I think to be taken, bless you, honey, to be taken a little bit more seriously as artists and music makers, I think those risks need to happen, and they're not going to be easy. You're going to be in your pants sometimes, and like, I don't know, you're going to fail, and it's going to happen, but I had a lot of coffee, so I'm like, opening those doors is like the beginning, and it needs to happen. And we need to also be on top of trends in the music industry. And I think one of the things that's also going to propel a cappella into a legit art form is original music. And there are some groups that are killing the game on that. And then there are a lot of us who are resting on covers and stuff. Like Honey Whiskey Trio, our whole first year was like, crap, we don't know any songs. So it was like all covers for a real long time. And then we started to find where we belonged and how we could challenge things and started writing. And I think once we get writing and getting people to make music that's theirs and they have all the ownership over it, it'll be a lot less this kind of stuff. Yeah, totally.
I think that doing this podcast, we've definitely seen that people want original music is a thing that people want. We just wrote a song together a few months ago and did a video, and like it's so hard. It took us like months and months to like get to that point.
For the record, it's very good.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't trying to.
No, for the record, it's very good.
Thank you. That's why we did
Stated
this.
For the record.
can download it on iTunes.
But anybody who's like dabbled with original stuff at all, what's your advice for people that are just getting off the ground in trying to do original stuff? Because it's much easier said than done, I find.
Yeah, so I write my own songs. I've been writing probably since I was, I don't know, like 13 or 14. Honestly, I would say the key to writing is just like hunkering down and doing it. Like you can write about anything. You can write about like what you ate for lunch or the last person you loved. Like there's really like the sky's the limit when it comes to topics. And songs can start as poems. It doesn't need to be a song right away. You don't need to have a melody in mind. You don't need to have even like lyrics in mind. If you can, I mean, and also it can switch. If you have a melody in mind, you don't need to have lyrics right away. If you have lyrics, you don't need to have a melody right away. It's just kind of a matter of like, hey, I had this thought, like, if you have a creative thought, write it down and come back to it later. Or, like, just whatever you think, like, is cool to you, write about it. It doesn't matter what other people think. Like, if you like it, then do it. Just hunker down and write a song. I mean, it is, like, easier said than done, I would agree. I've experienced writer's block. It's not a fun time. But to anybody who is starting to write songs, like, really, just you got to start somewhere. If you sit down and you write one line and then the next day you write another one and the next day you write another one, that is a start.
I'm curious, in your perspective, like in your experience, do you force yourself, like I'm going to go write for an hour, or do you wait for inspiration to come and then capture that?
I think I could be better about that, better about practicing, because I think practice makes permanent. If you create healthy and consistent practicing tendencies, then like you can get better at things. But I'm definitely like the worst about forcing myself to do that. I definitely will draw inspiration like random times in the day and write it down and then forget about it. Or I'll sit and something will come to me and I'll be in my room with my guitar and I'll write a song in like 15 minutes. Like I have intentions of releasing a single at some point, and it's called Emmeline. And I literally wrote that song in like 15 minutes. I sat there and I thought about this person and I was like, I'm going to write it. And I did. So sometimes it does come to you and sometimes it's hard work.
I am like the other side of that. I am like, it all comes out at once.
Okay.
And it'll happen like once a year. And it'll just be, no, I am serious.
The Santa Claus of songwriting.
Yes, dude, it's like I think I'm a much quicker arranger than I am a writer, because it just all is like word vomit and chord vomit. Like everything happens at once. And if I'm not by a computer, it's like,
We start hashtag
chord vomit. Yeah.
Yes.
But getting yourself into that, just something that you do, there is a website called Song a Day, and it's a beautiful community where you just create one song every day for 1 month, and you just upload them, and you start seeing all this content from other people, and it's like all over the place. Like one girl just uses a loop pedal and reverb in her voice. One girl just uses banjo. One friend of ours, Steve Blum, hey honey, he does these analog synth stuff, so it's all minimalist, techie, crazy stuff. But sitting down and forcing yourself to just kind of work through things is super helpful. Even if it's just like sitting at a piano and figuring out, those don't sound good together. Ooh, that does sound good together. And then just making a little mental note. So when you come back to it, like coming back to a line you may have written last week, it might fuel the creativity. And hopefully it happens more than once a year.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to shift it, but I want to jump off the songwriting thing a little bit. One thing I think that everybody's getting at in some form or another with the songwriting thing, and also with the competition aspect of this, is like communication, right? And I think the last a cappella album that everybody listened to was Bioluminescence by Aurora.
Oh my
Right?
goodness.
Everybody just went like, oh, you know what I mean? That was the last community album. It was the last album by a group that wasn't a mainstream group, that was one of our groups, so to speak, that dropped an album and everybody was like, whoa, this is the album, right? I think a big reason for that is that every single one of those songs is about something important to them, right? And it comes through in the song. And the opening song is about jumping off a bridge. Like, you know what I mean? It's like committing suicide, jumping off a bridge. Like, that level of honesty and that level of specificity and emotional vulnerability, that was what, no offense, was missing from like the Pentatonics album. You know what I mean? Like that album was great and it did really well, but it was more generic, it was more pop. To contrast, the Superfruit album, doing really well, much more specific, right? And I think like that's just a great example of the same people doing the same thing in two different ways, but I think it was more effective because it was more specific about specific experiences that people connected to. So I think in a lot of ways, the future of a cappella is connecting via specific experience in both songwriting and competition performance. I think that's a big next step for us. Is it's not just about like, oh, we're just doing things with voices, but it's like, okay, but what are we saying?
Yeah,
You know?
And I do think just to like go off of that and tie these two worlds together, kind of on your end, you're sort of saying like there's sometimes when you feel the inspiration and you're like going for it and everything just comes out, and then on the flip side, there's times when you're just sitting down and it's more technical and you're just trying to make it work. And I do think those times are valuable, even though it might not be just inspiration. So there's actually a book that I've been using by Pat Pattison. It's a songwriting book, and there's a lot of different exercises in there just to kind of force yourself to write things. So I think once you've been able to do these different techniques and try these different ways to figure out how to actually technically form a song, then it'll be a lot easier to use your emotional content and your memory and whatever inspiration you're using to combine the two to make something that's really powerful.
And I think that applies to cover songs as well, right? Like, it's like, I think that, you know, because whether you have to get ready for the next competition or the next album or whatever, there's a pressure for like your music to sound amazing immediately because acapella's reaching a super high level. But I think I feel like groups, and I know sometimes I don't feel this way, that it's okay to like do something and have it not be good and like learn from that. And like I think, you know, like you were saying, it's like we've kind of, there's still some tricks to be found, but it's like the whole novelty of it being, you know, music without instruments is kind of like, whatever.
I don't think it's ever going to stop working, but I think that we're going to hit a point of, I think we already have hit a point of diminishing returns with that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you know, people have seen the trick. It's a magic trick. What we do is a magic trick. You know, it's, oh, how did they do that? Well, they did it this way. You know what I mean? And now people are like, oh, okay, that's how they do it. And, you know, they're still like, okay, cool trick, bro. But like now they want to know there's got to be some more meat on that.
Yeah. Something to get off of that, to piggyback off of that rather, like I think a way that people get into acapella, people that I know that like don't like acapella, is often through like live shows, and like if they come with me to a live show, that's their entrance into the thing. And you know, I love recorded acapella. Obviously, I'm trying to do that, but like I think there's something about being in you know, a concert hall and like having the sound like be in your body that's super impressive. So Mike, you're a super good live sound guy. What advice do you have for groups?
Super good.
That was a setup.
I was like, is he doing? Oh, he's gonna totally do that.
Just go for it. Like, what do you feel, and what do you want to see?
So I
I'm a
think
professional.
I think it's really important to understand the medium in which you're trying to communicate, and if we're talking about music as a method of communication. So if you think back to Sing Off Season 1, I was actually just talking about this with Bill yesterday. If you go back on YouTube and you listen to the Sing Off, it wasn't very good. And like, it's not for lack of talent. Like, some of those groups that were on Season 1 were amazing. But the medium in which they were trying to present that was incompatible with the music. It was incompatible with the communication, with the language.
The technology.
Yeah. So what do I mean by that? So when you're at a live show, you're using all of your senses: touch, feeling, hearing, smells, temperature, everything. And you're getting the bass hitting your chest. You're getting the lights in your face. The person next to you is screaming and being annoying. Like, all these things contribute to the experience, and they kind of like blur the musical side of things. So when you're thinking about like, how do I best communicate, you have to understand, like, if I'm going to be putting on a live show, maybe we should invest in some sort of production value. But if I'm going to be putting something up on the internet, that kind of changes your thought process. Maybe it's not about one mic in a room and trying to capture it. Maybe it means that you do a little bit of a music video that's been edited and mixed in post, because you know that it's not going to carry over that medium as it would if it was live. So you have to kind of understand the limitations of the tools you're trying to use. I think the spirit of this whole like original music and cover songs and identity and all that stuff is, you have the tools. The tools have been defined. It's just picking them and using them properly. And yeah, I hope I kind of answered that question.
Yeah, totally. And I think you mentioned video, which is a big reason that we have Danny here. And I truly think, as a fan of music, not just a cappella music, videos are a huge way people consume music now. And like, I think it's super important. So like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, where do we even start? The bulk of my work was live video, and almost all of it was individually mic'd performances. And the purpose of a live concert video is to capture as much as we can of that feeling of being at a show, and digitizing it and letting you watch it in your bedroom. The struggles of it are like, if you're in a concert, it is super awkward to stand up and walk, like click off or like close that live concert. But like at home, most people will. So there's a significant amount of production value that we put into even like basic raw concert video. It's tuned, it's edited, it's the kick drums are pumped up, but that gets you more to that experience of being there live.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, for me anyway, when I'm like trying to check out like, oh, there's a new hot college a cappella group, like I want to see a video, like, or show me a recording, like show me something, or else like you don't exist basically on the internet now, or I don't know.
Yeah, and
video is
huge. And the problem is, or not a problem, but it all goes back to identity and what you're trying to do. So you have groups that are like, we recorded our show and it's pretty decent, maybe 2 angles of HD, whatever, but they upload the whole show. And they don't do anything else. They just upload the video. It's like, well, sometimes quantity isn't as good as quality, right? So like, I would rather you upload one song, one shot that's been post-produced, and this is not a plug for ACP, I promise, but one video that's post-produced that looks great, that sounds great, because that is your representation. That's what people are going to see when they go to your website, when they go to your Facebook page, and that's what's going to pull them into the show. So then they generate more ticket sales for you. So you can get that recognition instead of having to just blast it out there. There's a lot of stuff on social media that's just churn. And I call it churn. It's just like you're scrolling by and everyone's doing something. Everyone's uploading a million pictures. Just focus on one thing at a time. Make it great. Don't put anything up that's not great.
Yeah, totally. I think to that point, it's like it's hard to stand out from the crowd when there's so much happening. So really, focusing on quality and that connection is super important. It's kind of a weirder segue, but we were at the ACA Open finals, and Vocalight was there, and just like there was moments, especially when you were like when you were soloing, it was just like I'm just watching like a show, right? Like I'm not watching an a cappella show or whatever. And I think that like for a cappella to get to the next level, we just have to be music, right? It's not a cappella music. What are you thinking about when you're like trying to connect with the audience, or what are you not thinking about? Because I think that's
Oh my goodness. A good question. Honestly, I think it depends. Like if we're singing a song that I don't really relate to, I'll just fake it till I make it. Like I will use like the skills that I have as a performer to convey whatever emotion I need to, if I don't necessarily connect with it. But if we're singing like a ballad and I think about an ex like significant other, I'm like, oh my God. I'll think about that, and I'll like speak it to the audience. For me, performing is storytelling, always. Even if I'm on a background vocal, if I'm on a solo, whatever, I am telling a story. Like I will pick a person in the audience or multiple people and just say like, I am talking at you and this is what I feel and I need you to listen. Like regardless of whether or not it's like Shape of You or Unsteady, I think I definitely just have to. Yeah, it's about like different mindsets. It's really like fake it till I make it on a pop song, or vibe or whatever. Yeah.
To follow up on that, like, how do you? I think it's not easy, but it's easier to connect with your group than it is to the audience. And I feel like sometimes I'll watch a cappella and I'll feel like I'm watching an inside joke that's like playing out in front of me that I'm not part of. This for everybody that's like, I'm sure everybody's been on stage before. How do you try to get past that? Because I remember you had a tweet that you were like, I've seen so many bands that like weren't like maybe technically everything, but I left feeling something. And that's the goal at the end of the day. How do we like try to get towards that?
First of all, I'm sitting here thinking like it's so weird that like a compliment in our community is, wow, that was like real. You know what I mean? Like really, like that. Isn't that weird that we're like, oh, I watched that performance and it was just like a performance. yeah, bro. You know, like you would never go up to a band and be like, yo, you guys were real. They'd be like, yeah, we know. Like, you know what I mean? Like the fact, I don't really know, I don't know like what has to shift for that to shift for us, but that's got to shift. You talk about the future, like that's got to change, right? Our standard shouldn't be, oh, that felt like a real performance. Like that implies that most of them don't, and who wants to watch that, right? I don't know. Maybe we can drill down more into that. Your question was how...
Connecting with the audience, not just the people on stage.
Connecting with the audience, not just the people on stage. I mean, I can just tell you my philosophy of it. I have started to think about everything I do from an audience perspective, right? Everything. Arranging, performing, solo, everything, at least seeing it at some point from the audience's point of view. Because that's who you're there to serve, right? Music is beautiful. It's a wonderful release. It's a wonderful way for us to work through emotions for ourselves. It's a wonderful thing that we can do for ourselves. But if you're a performing group, your job is to entertain, right? Your job is to connect. Your job is to create something of value for your audience, right? So I think that part of the way you get to that is by creating some emotion within yourself. But I always tell groups, if you're going to have that moment of building something together, it should be in service of sending it out, right? Because if you're just doing it for yourself, that's fine. But that's what rehearsal's for. That's what a house jam is for. That's what private, smaller thing is for. That's not what that's not what people paid to see. That's not what people come to your show to see, right? They come to have you connect with them, right? So I always at least think about it from that perspective, and that might be a little bit of the capitalist, like the market person in me. But that's a lot of my philosophy is thinking about it from that perspective, and what would I want to see if I was in the audience? Like what kind of connection would I want to feel?
I was actually you had earlier brought up a good point about just marketing and how like sometimes it's expensive and you need a lot of tools and resources. But I do think at the same time, just because our current world is so digital and so social that it's a completely different platform than it was even 3 years ago, and it's constantly changing. And I do think that there are ways you can be savvy with digital media and savvy with our network, specifically with this a cappella community, because it is so close-knit and it's so supportive. I think there are ways to sort of use that to launch yourself forward.
Vocalight's building a brand. I mean, I think right on the panel we've got a good example of this. It's just like, how did you guys think about like building your brand? You didn't have a ton of money when you went through these phases. Like, what's the thought process behind building the Vocalight brand? Justin Critchfield in the audience.
I was just gonna say that a lot of the stuff that we do isn't necessarily like all. Hello. A lot of the stuff that we do isn't necessarily like all that thought out and meticulously planned. It's just a matter of doing. Yeah. And there's like a lot of things going on. That's like a lot of. I think a big theme right now is that a lot of people are scared to get into things, scared to make groups, and that's why there's a huge decline. And I think the way that we are able to build a brand is just by trying things. Like, oh yeah, that didn't work. Let's get a new person here. That's not working. Let's rebrand it something else. It's just about like consistently doing and stop worrying about if things are going to work out, if things are going to be exactly what you thought they were. It's just rolling with the punches and realizing that times are changing, and if we got to get with it if we are going to succeed, Yeah. It's just about doing. That's what I think.
Yeah. So we're nearing the end of this panel today, but just before we stop, I just want to like really quickly open it up. If there's any questions at all for any of the panelists, all of the panelists, I'd want to just entertain that. Yeah. I'll just re-say your question now.
Cool. It's a little bit long-winded, and so bear with me. But my question is about like access in the future of a cappella. And I don't know like who can answer this question necessarily, but like I work in a middle school where it's a charter school, so like half the kids are bused in, and half of them are a little bit more privileged and are like children of like staff and faculty at UCLA. So it's a really interesting mix of students that I have. And a few years ago, they asked me to put together an a cappella group for them, which is a young group of students, and they don't read music. There is no actual music program at the school, so everything is taught by ear. And there's a lot of them that are very talented but don't have access to other things, And we were talking about these camps like A Cappella Academy and Camp A Cappella and all of these things, and I understand that there is scholarship programs available for students who are talented enough to make the cut, but what are the opportunities for the kids that are not maybe at the caliber to be accepted into those programs but still want an opportunity to learn?
A question about access, if anybody wants to.
You want to repeat that?
So I teach at a charter school, and
Can the stenographer read that back, please? Well, I mean, I think, one of the things is, figuring out who's in your area that can help you. I'm here. I will help you. You know what I mean? Like, you know me, and Meron is here. There are people that you can reach out to. Like, I'll come work with your group. You know what I mean? Like, if you just say, hey, like, I got this group. They're not the best group in the world, but like, we want to get better. I know that you're excited about this. Can we find some time? Yeah. Like, I think you'd be surprised the people that will help out if you ask. I will. I'll commit to that right now on record. But I think there's a lot of us out here. I think sometimes if it's at a professional level, if it's a group that's like has their eye on competition or performing, making money, that changes the game for me a little bit, because I'm like, okay, you're looking at this from a professional perspective. I'm going to look at this from my professional perspective, which is I need to make some money to take care of myself professionally. But if it's really like, hey, this group of kids loves it, we don't have a lot of access to resources, can we get some free arrangements, get some coaching, whatever it is. I think you'd be surprised a lot of people around here would do it, and I think there's people in most areas that would help out with that. So that would be one place to start.
So real quick, I have a client in Madison, at UMass, it's all female group, and they were doing like their winter tour where they were going around to random middle schools and high schools, and they ended up at a high school where the principal was so blown away by what they were doing in the workshop. They were like, can you help us start a group? So what ended up happening is 2 members from this college group ended up directing and founding a high school group, and they had their first concert. They actually were able to perform at this college group's concert, and it was kind of cool because it was like a fruition of all this effort, all this time, all this like volunteer work that the college group put in to help the high school group, almost as like a mentorship. And that was something that was obviously really successful. But I mean, there's tons of groups around here, so maybe try to link up with those local college groups. You never know. There might be people that just love it as much as we all do and want to help out.
And maybe one more question before we can, maybe a young person. I'm just kidding.
Let the record show that Bill Hare was just massively snubbed.
Bill Hare just threw down a chair on our podcast.
Bill Hare is currently rampaging through the classroom. He can't be stopped.
Look at European acapella. What? I'm sorry. We just have time for one more. Sorry, who had their hand raised?
You're a young person, Holly. How about you?
This is for you, Rob. This might be kind of like a hard question. I don't know exactly how to articulate it, but how has your arranging style changed like over the years, like since you first started arranging, and like where is it now? Where do you think it's going heading into the future?
Okay, cool. So this question was about my arranging style and how it's evolved and where it's going in the future. I think a lot more about the audience now. That's a big thing. I think where it's going, and it's in sort of tandem with where I think a cappella in general is going, I'm trying to simplify things. I think everybody should. I did a really brief stint in grad school where I worked with somebody, and he was like, listen, if you're going to make a moment, right? Don't obscure it with a whole bunch of texture. Don't make this wash of sound. Make sure that it's clear what's happening in this moment, right? And that's something I really took to heart in my arranging too, where it's like I try to make sure that the audience is guided through what I'm doing. Like I see myself as the tour guide of the emotional experience, right? So if I want you to know what you're looking at any given point, I want you to know what I want you to feel at any given point, and I want to make sure it's clear, right? So I think that that's something that like I'm working towards, and some of that means fewer parts, less texture, more of an idea of what I want to come out at any given moment. But I think that that's a lot of the future, and that kind of weaves in with the emotional thing, is it's like if you want people to feel something, you got to be clear about what that is and how you're doing it. And it's got to be a really concerted effort, right? People don't necessarily know what to feel if it's just 12 parts going blah, 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 you know what I mean? It's a wash of sound can be effective sometimes, but I think if you think about the moments that really stick with you, it's the moments where you're like, oh, everything really lined up, and I got what that message was in that moment. So that's what I'm working more towards in my arranging, is making sure that those moments land, and cutting the fluff, and just drilling down to what's important. And what really communicates, rather than just sort of throwing all the pasta at the wall and then throwing some sauce on it and eating wall pasta. Bringing it back to the pasta.
Questions, anybody? I'll teach you all.
And that's a segue. I gave myself chills on that one.
And I'd actually just love to wrap it up. If you just go down the line and kind of just say, in as many words as you want, what you think the future of a cappella is.
Experimentation, something we don't currently have right now. I want to see something weird, something new. And it's going to happen.
I was going to say more collaboration. I think specifically, at least for CASA, I know that we are really excited with all the new board members to kind of start working with other organizations, be more involved in each other's events, and really kind of unite the community a little bit more across the country. And I think with that kind of collaboration, there will be a lot of interesting things to come out of it.
The exact same thing. I think that the future is risk and community.
Oh, you're not going to do one?
No.
We'll bounce back to that. I think that the future is continuing to drill down to the heart of what it is that we do, which is communication. Making sure that the way that we're communicating is effective via arrangements that make sense, via performances that land. I think what that's going to do is, with TV shows or not, it's going to create more people that are going to shows and being like, whoa, that really moved me, that really touched me. They're going to go home, they're going to be like, oh, I want to sing. A bunch of those people are going to be great. They're going to form groups, and it's going to continue to build from there. So I think it's about getting more people involved, and it's about getting more people involved by being communicative and honest and putting something out there that is important to you.
So this is going to sound really cliche, but honestly, the future a cappella is the majority of you sitting here right now. All of us here at one point were where you were. I remember my first SoJam. Yeah. I remember my first SoJam, watching the producers panel where Bill was on it with Ed Boyer and James Gammon and Jace Cannon, and I was just in awe. I was like, this is amazing. I want to do this. And I never thought I would be able to. I never thought I would ever, make it, right? And it's not like we're all superstars or anything, but we're just like you. We work really hard. We have the passion. So if you want to do this, you can totally do this. It involves sacrifice and making concessions at times, but the future people that are going to be up here having these conversations are you. So I would encourage you all to do that.
So, that idea of planting a seed for something you may not live long enough to enjoy the fruits of or whatever. Same idea of taking risks and being experimental. It's going to be hard, and you're going to get blowback, and you're going to get people saying, oh, there's only 3 of them or whatever. You're only girls, and it's really hard to win with only girls. And that type of idea, taking those risks so that not only your own group can continue to be innovative, but again, like all of you guys, seeing and getting the inspiration and wanting to continue to be.
Yeah.
I almost said the F word. Oh my God.
It's all good. Well, thank you so much to all our panelists for coming out to this. And we hope you join us next week for a new episode of HIVE Voice. We have stickers in the back. Thank you all for coming.
Without